Welcome to the Leap Hour, where inspiring leadership meets real-world impact. Hosted by Steve Farber, acclaimed author of The Radical Leap, this show brings you face-to-face with visionary leaders who embody the art of leading with love, energy, audacity, and proof. In each episode, Steve dives deep into the journeys of remarkable individuals who've embraced extreme leadership to ignite change, spark innovation, and inspire others to greatness. These are the game changers, the risk takers, and the leaders who prove that heart and courage can change the world. This is the Leap Hour, and the conversation starts now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode, live episode of the Leap Hour. I'm Steve Farber, if you haven't figured that out already. So listen, I wanted to start by giving you an overview of what this series is going to be about and where the idea came from and what we hope to experience here together over at least the next several months. So 20 years ago this year, I published my first book. I'd been writing it for several years before that. It's just how the process goes. My first book, The Radical Leap, came out in 2004. So according to my advanced mathematical skills, that makes it exactly 20 years ago. And you know, when I first published that book, or when it was published at the time by a company called Kaplan, I was hopeful that it would make a difference. I was hopeful, from an ego perspective, that it might put me on the map, at least to a certain degree. What I really had no idea about was the kind of impact it would have, and what ended up being the evergreen nature of this book. So for 20 years, this framework of the Radical Leap, which stands for love, energy, audacity, and proof, has been out there. It's been out in the world, at least to a certain degree. And it's been out there at least to enough of a degree that we now know that it's been field tested, and many people have used these ideas to great effect. For me personally, one of the wonderful, perhaps the most wonderful outcome of this whole experience has been the people that I've met as a result of the book. And this was something that I honestly never anticipated. As a new author, and I was thinking, wow, this is going to be cool, and I'm going to see my book on the bookshelf, and you never know what's going to happen. I just never thought that the biggest benefit of this thing is going to be I'm going to increase my network of dear friends. It's been remarkable. So the idea behind this show is I want to introduce a good number of these people to you. These are people who I consider to be extreme leaders. Many of them are CEOs of their companies. We've got entrepreneurs, we've got educators, we've got consultants, people of all kinds who've connected with me through the book because they read it and made a difference. They reached out and I reached back, and the friendship started. And it all started with this. This is what this book looked like when it first came out 20 years ago. Published by Kaplan. That was the cover then. This is the cover today, and it's been through a few iterations between those two versions. And every time that book is picked up by somebody, there is, well, it's probably a bit of an exaggeration, not every time, but many times when that book is picked up by somebody, whether it was 20 years ago or 2 weeks ago, it ends up in a new relationship for me. So, like I said, I'm going to be sharing these folks with you as time goes on, but also in celebration of this 20-year anniversary, I am offering to you and yours, a free download of the Radical Leap audiobook. So if you go to radicalleap.org, you can download a copy of that book for yourself. So for today's inaugural episode, we're going to do something a little bit different from the shows that you're going to see weekly for the next several months. So let me start by interviewing my introducing my guest today. This is a guy, here he is now, Maurice Thibodeau, one of the aforementioned people that I've met through my body of work. And Maurice and I have, since the time we met, and this was just a few years ago, we've had a couple of ventures together, including the Extreme Leader Accelerator, which is our mastermind program. And he was kind of the mastermind behind the mastermind program. We've had incredible results and great experience with that program. So Maurice is here to help us kick this off. Also to help us, in this process of this being our first live episode, helping us to, experiment a little bit, get to, learn a few lessons from the production side of things. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to flip the script here a little bit. Maurice's role today is in the role that essentially I will be playing in our subsequent shows. In other words, he is here to interview me. So I get to be an interviewee on my own show. So Maurice, thanks so much for being here, man. I really appreciate your helping us out on this maiden voyage of the Leap Hour.
I'm so looking forward to it. Getting to put the Steve Farber in the hot seat on his first show. I am, you can tell on my face, one, I'm excited because I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I feel really, really honored that I get to do that you're trusting me, knowing me, to, open up the vault of Steve Farber and understand your extreme leadership story. And if anyone really knows me, I'm not really one to ask light questions.
Yeah, that's true.
So how I want to frame this, because this is about really understanding, right, people's leadership stories. And how I want to frame our conversation, Steve, is, before Leap and after Leap. And when I say before Leap, I mean before you got the inspiration to write it, right? Not the years while you were writing it, not the years that you were integrating the learnings. I'm talking about the times in your life where love, energy, audacity, and proof maybe weren't either understood or weren't abundant, or, they weren't concepts that maybe you had and needed, because I'm assuming you wrote about them when we create something, it's because we need it ourselves or we've been inspired by it ourselves. So I want to start before. So wherever you want to start, and with whatever right, the love, energy, audacity, proof, whatever one you want to start with. But if you go before,
yeah,
can you think of a time in your life, in your leadership experience, where maybe you needed a little bit more of that than you had, or than you understood how to get?
Yeah, that's cool. And by the way, folks, I don't know exactly what questions Maurice is going to be asking.
No, you did not know I was going to do that.
And he has carte blanche to ask whatever the hell he wants. And I will even likely answer them, no matter what they are. Anyway, so the before Leap and after Leap in my life is a significant milestone. I learned a lot about leadership, and particularly the love element of leadership. And love is really the foundation of the whole Leap framework. I learned about it from my own experience, by being in business that had none of it. So I personally, I had, I started out as an entrepreneur. I started out I started out as a musician. For those of you who are watching this and not listening to it, you see how the guitar is hanging on the background in my office. I've been playing guitar since I was 13 years old. and I wanted to be a musician. And I also got married young, had a family young, and I came to understand that being a musician, a working musician, and what do you call it? Feeding people were mutually exclusive pursuits. So I gave up music. I gave up the thing that I loved the most, other than my family. And I went into business. And I went into business into the commodities futures business, not because I had a passion for it, but because I had a friend who was in it and I needed a job. And he said, I'll teach you. So I ended up being in that industry for several years. I discovered that I was an entrepreneur because I ended up with my own shop, my own small brokerage firm. And I learned about business. I learned about what it means to lead a team to some degree. I learned about marketing. I learned about that particular industry, and I also learned through day-to-day, visceral, gut-wrenching experience that I freaking hated it. I hated it. It wasn't that I didn't love it. It was that I hated it. And that's a very odd place to be when it's your own business, right? I mean, this whole thing about being an entrepreneur, and I'm going to be my own boss, and I'm going to have my own company, all the above. But the one missing ingredient was love. And like I said, not just that it was missing, it was really kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. So I learned how I could be moderately successful, just moderately, in a business, and at the same time feel like death was approaching. I was young. I wasn't even 30 years old yet. And I felt like that business was killing me. So I won't go into all the details because it's a very long story, but I eventually ended up getting out of that business. And I found a way to use my business experience and start to combine it with what I really was passionate about, which was communicating with people, inspiring people. That's what music does, right? So I found it wasn't like I went back to music and suddenly became a rock star. I just found a business that enabled me to get up on stage or in front of people with people and inspire them and help them in their business. So I combined my business experience with my communication experience, and I started doing consulting and training programs and all of that. And it put me on a path wherein I, from having been through an experience where I woke up every morning experiencing dread, to waking up every morning and experiencing joy and enthusiasm. So that was my first taste. I didn't have a label to put on it yet, but that was my first experience in that transition between misery and love.
Okay. Thank you. So that was a really good highlight of love being.
By the way, I am short answer challenged.
Yeah.
So
no,
that's
it's fine.
My show. It's my. I'll be as long-winded as I like.
I will try to do my good job of condensation, not the rain part, but okay. So that was a story about love. First, losing love, leaving your love for music. And if I can jab, I guess you just weren't good enough. Music is tough. Yeah. No, okay, but and then you went into something that you really didn't love. So you really got the opposite spectrum there. But we're feeding your family, but didn't love it.
Yep.
And then you took a leap, and there was some shady, we didn't get the details of what was the leap that got you to leave something that was you hated into something that you got your first taste of love. So there's a question in there.
Yeah.
If you remember what it was. And then it sounds like you kind of found a loophole too to get on stage. You found a loophole to rock stardom. Yeah. That wasn't music, which is brilliant and shows your creative connecting nature. So is there anything that you feel would be relevant to share in terms of that leap point, right? Of I hate this, and I'm gonna take the leap to try something else.
Yes, actually there was, and it was really quite unexpected. Um, so I got out of that business, of my own business. I shut it down before having any idea what I was going to go into.
Yeah, I know what
All I
that
knew
feels
was I couldn't do that anymore. So I was crystal clear on a couple of things. Number one, I knew in my bones, to my core, that there was something I was supposed to be doing on this planet. I was crystal clear on that. I was equally clear that I had no freaking idea what it was.
Mhm.
Zero. And then I was just having a conversation with an old friend one day, and she mentioned to me that a mutual friend of ours was working doing some kind of training programs for corporations. And that was pretty much the extent of the detail that I got. And all my lights went on in that moment. And I said, that is it. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that's what I was supposed to be doing. So I started doing some research on what is this. At the time, the field was mostly referred to as training and development. So I joined the Association of Training and Development. The ASTD is what it was called at the time. I got their catalog of training companies. None of this, no internet, right? This was all paper based. And I started researching companies, and I reached out to a couple of them, and one of them gave me a shot. And I got up on a platform in front of people, and boom, it just kind of took off from there. Which eventually led me to working at the Tom Peters Company and the meeting of my mentors. But it was literally in that moment. And I think, I have a tendency, Maurice, as you know, I have a practice. It's a habit, really, of looking at experience, in this case, my own experience, and trying to extract
Yeah.
the lesson out of it.
Yep.
So the lesson in this for me, and I hope for other people, is that oftentimes if we give ourselves the permission to be awake to the things that excite us, to the things that are that could spark our passion, we're going to find opportunities
Yep.
that we wouldn't have found otherwise.
Yep.
And I don't know, we could have a philosophical debate all day long about, are we manifesting it? Are we creating it? Is the universe creating it for us? I don't know. Maybe. But what I do know is, at the very least, it makes us more aware of the opportunities that come our way that we otherwise would have missed if we
Yeah.
didn't give ourselves that permission to begin with.
Yeah. You answered the call of your heart, like the clarity of knowing that you had something to do. Like that feels like you felt that, and you answered that call, not knowing what the answer was, but just being aware enough to leave what you were doing, which was a huge. So that's audacity to me.
And I
Like
would say,
that's
yeah, it is. Although, it didn't feel like audacity at the time. It just felt like I was being pulled into it in a very real way. And there was a moment, just a little bit later on, when I got picked up by this international training company. I mean, for whatever reason, they believed in me and gave me a shot. And I remember this was in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time. And I remember being in their office, and I was learning this program that they had hired me to teach. So there's a lot of pressure, and I felt kind of stressed out. I was going to be doing my inaugural program. It was a program called Putting People First. And this would have been like in 1988, 89, something like that. And my first program, my first client, I was going to be teaching this program to about 120 people. It was to the garbage men of Lodi, California.
okay. What a great first group.
waste management company in
Yeah.
Lodi, California. So anyway, I'm trying to learn this program, and I'd never taught a program like this before, and I remember specifically there was a moment in the office one day. I was in the midst of learning this program that I felt like I just woke up. My energy. So I was doing this thing that I love. My
Mhm.
energy just turned on all of a sudden. And
Yep.
what it made me realize, the contrast was so great. It made me realize that what I had been doing for the previous, I'm going to say 7 years, maybe, as
Mhm.
a young family guy and in that other business, that I was essentially sleepwalking.
Mm.
I was so miserable that I
Yeah.
kind of put myself to sleep.
Yep.
And then I woke up in that moment and my energy came out in a way that it had never done before, at least not in my adult life.
Yep.
And that was when I knew, oh, this is it. Even before I ever did my first program, I knew that this was it.
Yeah. Wow. So when you're talking about your transition and you said, well, it didn't feel audacious because I was pulled towards it. And I'm curious because I'm hearing it in a little bit different way. Um, it, I'm hearing it in a way that feels more like you were pushed because it felt like death and you were like surviving and you trusted enough to go away to try something new. And then that moment in the office, that feels like the pull
Yeah.
where it was just like, it feels like more like you were like, you're getting pushed, like this is not the way that you're meant to exist in the world. And you
Yeah.
answered that call.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting consideration. Might be a little bit of semantics because push versus pull kind of depends on which side of that equation you're standing on,
Right.
right? So either way, I'd accept either one. But
Okay.
what I knew is that I didn't. Yes, I had a choice. Yes, I made a choice, but it didn't. It felt more like um, an inevitability
Mm.
versus a choice. So when I say it didn't feel audacious, it wasn't like I said, "Okay, I've got this opportunity. I'm going to try this thing. It's going to be a big risk, and I might crash and burn." Never had the thought. Never had that thought.
Mm.
So audacious, by the way, so people,
Mm.
we're all on board with that language. Audacity, I define it as a bold and blatant disregard for normal constraints in order to change the world for the better. So that first part, a bold and blatant disregard for normal constraints, means that I'm willing to see beyond the boundaries and take the risks necessary in order to create a new and better reality. So there was a part of that in me at the time, but again, it didn't feel like a risk. It just felt like it just it was what it was,
Mm.
which is the past tense of it is what it is. I guess.
Yeah, it I have a curiosity, and maybe I'll ask the question then of if you were to reflect, being someone that's really studied energy, and when you reflect on your experience through this, you not even having the question, like you didn't question it, you were all in. You didn't know what that meant, so it didn't feel audacious because the fear wasn't there. Um, I'm curious if the fear would have been there, as I think it probably would come up for many people. I'm I'm wondering how much that would have gotten in your way,
Hmm,
because it sounds like this
sure.
happened pretty fast. Like you
Yeah,
went in it like
I
just
don't know. That's a good question. But to put it in the right perspective, it wasn't like I was a stranger to fear.
right.
I had been living in fear for years.
Mm,
I woke up every day in fear. I didn't know how I was going to provide for my family. I didn't know how I was going to survive the day. Back
mhm,
when I had the business, after I shut it down, like I said, I didn't have anything.
yeah.
So when I say I was like I was walking in my sleep, it was a sleep. If just to expand that image, it was a sleep that was filled with night terrors,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So at this
yeah.
juncture,
Yeah.
when I was moving into a new way of showing up in the world, it was a relief from the fear.
Mm,
So it's just a little bit of a different context. I think for a lot of people, though, to your point, if I'm like we said a couple of minutes ago, if I'm giving myself permission to find the things that I'm passionate about, oftentimes pursuing those things is scary. It does involve a risk because maybe it means trying something new, maybe it means risking failure, maybe it means risking money, maybe it means leaving the familiar. So oftentimes these moments are characterized by um, an acknowledgement of the fear and then a willingness to pursue it anyway,
mhm,
or maybe even to pursue it because the
mhm,
fear is there,
mhm,
because that's a sign that I'm doing something new and audacious and different.
mhm. Is there so one more question about the past because we're almost at the halfway point, so I want to move and I think we have that kind of inflection point. But one more question about really understanding Steve Farber because I don't think it's not my experience in the world that a lot of people have the um, I'll say the inner wiring to step through that fear, like to do that process that you just described, and you were doing that on a daily basis. So I'm curious if you look at like the wiring of Steve Farber, how you grew up, how you were raised, who was around you. If you were to like point to some people or some whatever, if you were to point to anything that was like, oh, I'm so glad I had that experience because it helped me to answer the call. It helped me to.
Yeah. um, I think I wrote a song recently um, called "I Have Always Been an Optimist,"
Mhm,
um, and the first line is I've always been the first line of the chorus. I've always been an optimist. I just got to work harder at it nowadays. I think it's in my DNA. I just got to work harder at it these days. I think it's in my DNA to a certain degree. I think I'm kind of wired for it.
mhm,
And I had a very kind of pivotal experience, to put it lightly, when I was 8 years old, and that's when my mother died.
mhm,
So throughout my childhood, I always had great support, from my father, from my sister and brother, and community around me.
mhm.
But I was the different kid because I was the kid that didn't have a mom.
Right?
And right, but there was
Yeah.
something in me, something in the way that I was wired that turned that into a positive,
Wow.
right? It felt like, "Oh, I'm different in a good sort of a way. I'm different in a way that people are more likely to extend themselves to me, to be supportive of me." And with a different kind of a natural makeup, it could have been, and not to say that it
Yeah.
wasn't a traumatic experience. I mean, certainly
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
but the outcome of that could have been very different, right?
Yeah.
So I think all of us have certain um, biological predispositions to one thing or another,
Mhm,
right? I mean, we see it discovered in all kinds of assessments, like your own,
mhm.
for example, um,
The life
and
inventory assessment. I just
the
gotta plug
life
it in super.
inventory
Yeah.
assessment created by one Maurice Thibodeau.
Thank you.
You're going to discover things about yourself that are just kind of naturally there. So it's
Mhm,
nature versus nurture kind of a thing.
mhm,
But I think all of us, no matter where we're starting from, have we all have the opportunity to nurture that in us that we would like to develop more of.
mhm,
So my experience is unique to me. Your experience is unique to you.
mhm,
But I think the principles are universal. the principles of pursuing those things that give you that tap into your heart, gives you more energy
Mhm.
to do great work, inspires you to be more audacious in the pursuit of your goals,
Mhm.
and also requires that you prove yourself
Mhm.
through your actions and your congruence between your words and your actions every day.
Mhm.
And all of us have an opportunity within that framework. It just looks different for each of us.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so transition point, right? You're in the boardroom and it's like, I'm now alive. I'm now alive. So how does Leap transform into your leadership story? It's been 20 years, right?
Yeah,
It's had this huge influence on who you've met and how it's influenced, right?
sure.
So yeah, let's like
So
before or after Leap. Yeah.
yeah, there was a career experience that really helped to shape what ultimately became the Radical Leap. I eventually ended up, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, at the Tom Peters Company,
Mhm.
where I met my mentors.
Yeah.
Tom Peters, for one,
Yeah.
who was one of the greatest management thinkers of the modern era.
Not a bad place to learn.
Not a bad place to learn. And my more significant mentor at the Tom Peters Company was Jim Kouzes.
Mm,
So Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner are the co-authors of the Leadership Challenge, and they have their body of work is probably the most significant on leadership on the planet.
yeah.
Jim was the president of the Tom Peters Company at the time. He was the guy that hired me, and I ended up working very closely with Jim and teaching and coaching around his leadership framework,
Nice.
the Leadership Challenge framework. That's what I did at the Tom Peters Company in the 90s. I eventually became a vice president of that company, so I was on the executive team with Jim. And I left that company in 2000 to go out on my own. And what had happened in that interim, towards the end of my tenure at the Tom Peters Company, um, I by this time I had had tremendous experience in working with all kinds of companies and all kinds of industries,
Yeah.
and I'd met so many great leaders and so many, let's say, not so great leaders
Yeah.
in the context of my client work. Um, so I had this broad based kind of education in not just business, but more specifically, the importance of the quality of leadership within these businesses.
Right.
So I just got to the point where I started to ask myself, okay, based on everything that I've learned from Jim and Barry,
Mhm.
based on everything that I've learned from my clients, based on all the experience that I've had in my time at the Tom Peters Company, what do I think about all this?
Right.
Or the other way that I asked the question was, based on everything that I've learned and all the experience that I've had, if I could flip some kind of a magic switch, wave a magic wand,
Mhm.
and have everybody get it, have those lights go on for everybody,
Mhm.
what is it? What would I have them get?
Mhm.
And that's where the love element came out.
Mm.
First and foremost,
Yeah.
I would have everybody understand that fundamentally, great leadership and great business is an act of love. It is a deeply human experience.
Yeah.
So I said, now Kouzes and Posner have a practice that they call encouraging the heart.
Mhm.
And they talk about love. Jim always talked about love. He used to sign his he still does to this day, signs his emails, love him and lead him.
Wow. Yeah.
And and it was always kind of in the context of, by the way, this is really all about love.
Mhm.
It was almost parenthetical. And
Mhm.
I thought, no, man, we gotta shine the spotlight on this thing. It's first and foremost, it's about love. So as I started to think that through, what are the implications of it? That's where the whole leap framework emerged. If
Okay.
I if I was really cultivating love, what would that do? Well, it would generate energy. It would inspire people to be audacious,
Yeah.
inspire me and others to be audacious. And it would require that I prove that I really mean this and not just talk a good game, which everybody's capable of doing,
Yeah.
right? Love you, man. I love you, man. Love you,
Yeah.
man. That's easy to say.
Yeah.
Putting it into practice in business is something else.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, that is my point of view. That's what I need to write about.
Yep.
So when I wrote The Radical Leap, which took me several years, by the way,
Mhm.
with lots of starts and stops and experimentation and all that, I was actually concerned that the title of the book, that the content of the book would not live up to the title. Radical, the radical leap. Because
Mhm.
to me, there was nothing radical about this. To say that love is the foundation of leadership, that's not radical. It's freaking obvious.
Fundamental. Yeah.
But it turns out it was pretty radical
Yeah.
to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So that's where it started.
Wow.
And by the way, to extract the lesson from this,
Mhm.
I believe this is what we should all do. I believe that we should all make it a practice of saying, okay, what's my experience been?
Mhm.
What have I learned?
Mhm.
Whether I'm in accounting, or I'm in tech, or I'm in healthcare, or I'm in construction, we all have our body of work, our experience that we've accumulated over the years.
Yep.
We should all be saying every so often to stop and say, okay, what have I learned from
Yep.
all these other people in my experience? And what do I think about all this?
What is my point of view?
What's my
Yeah.
point of view?
This is really cool because I didn't actually expect. We've known each other for long enough and had a lot of hours. I didn't expect to have a deeper layer of knowing you get revealed live. And I've been honored to architect, right, some of your work. And as you're talking, and I'm thinking about the leadership edge and the whole the whole arc of the online modules, and I'm reflecting on how they've affected me, and I'm thinking about the language in there. And at the end, right at the end of the 10 modules, it's like,
So you're
okay,
referring now to the online program that we
yes, yeah.
together. Yeah.
And at the end, where you're like, okay, it's time to determine what is your point of view. What is your BOD, your body of work? And I use body of work all the time now with my own stuff.
It's BOW,
So,
by the way.
right. Well,
What
I
is your
wanted to,
bod? What is
I
your
want,
bod?
I
Yeah,
wanted to give
that's a
you
good
an
question too, because
opportunity
you got to work
to
on your
correct
bod.
my imperfections. That's why you're the author.
It's a live show.
I'm the interviewer. But seriously, the heart that's in every element of what you've written is part of your personal experience. Like, it's part of your arc of experience that you are inviting to, and that you believe at your core others have, I'd say, a responsibility to do. Slow down and say, what is your point of view on this? Cool. Okay. So that, I think you answered it, because I was going to say, okay, you're in this job, loving what you do. You're surrounded by like the mentors in leadership and management that are at the right world stage. You're working with companies that are diverse and worldwide, and yet still you leave to go do your own thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So that feels like another leap. And maybe I think I heard you talk about it, but like, I think it's worth repeating. What was it about your point of view that gave you enough energy to say, yeah, it's time for me to leave
Spread my
this
wings, fly, leave the cocoon.
this amazing thing? Because
Yeah.
that's like, you're not leaving something you hate. You're actually leaving something that you love for something that you might love even more, or maybe you knew for sure. I don't know. That's what I'm curious to know. Like, what was your level of confidence? How scary was it when you made that leap? How did you make that decision from love to maybe even love more?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very insightful question, Maurice. Because it was a very different motivation at the time,
Yeah.
right? So when I decided to leave the Tom Peters company, it was really for a very simple reason. I had discovered, having done a lot of facilitation work, facilitating a lot of discussion with executives, and facilitating is about encouraging conversation and pulling out of people. I had also discovered that I really love the presenting part,
Right.
and being up on stage and doing a keynote was a real treat for me.
Right.
So I started thinking, well, I'd like to do more of that.
Yep.
I think I could be really, really good at it. So I had a conversation with the leadership team at the time, and we had had a few shifts in leadership in the company, and we, I got their blessing to start doing more keynotes. What we soon discovered was that if I was booked to do a keynote, say on a Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
it took me off of the company calendar for the entire week because our programs were 3-4 days long.
Right.
So there was a conflict, and
Right.
we talked about it, and we all, I really wanted to pursue that. I felt like I had something to say, and I had a unique way of saying it.
Mm-hmm.
And the company was really supportive in my doing it, but we were at odds in terms of the company's business model and
Yep.
my aspirations. So we decided together that I should go out on my own.
Wow.
And it took 6 months for me to transition
Yeah.
out of the company
Yeah.
and onto my own. And they gave me just a incredible, beautiful send-off. I still have it. It's hanging in my closet upstairs. They gave me a baseball jersey as my kind of like my going away party
Mm-hmm.
that had an exclamation point, which was the Tom Peters company logo,
Mm-hmm.
exclamation point, and on the back it had my Farber #1, and
Oh wow, cool.
yeah, it was fantastic. And that was the love with which they sent me out on my way. And was I scared? Yeah, I was. I mean, there was a little bit of that fear that we were talking about earlier, like, oh shit, what's going to happen here?
Mm-hmm.
So this is, the dynamic that we refer to often, and I wrote about in the Radical Leap, as the OSM, capital O, capital S, exclamation mark, capital M, which stands for the oh shit moment.
Yep.
And that is that experience that we all have when we are doing or about to do something. There it is. It's even on a hat. Yeah.
A well-used hat.
I know. So it says embrace the fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is, I did have that experience. It was an OSM, but I also had great champions in that. I started working right away with a speakers bureau called Leading Authorities. My friend Rainey Foster at Leading Authorities, who's one of the principals there now, one of the partners there. At the time, she was a champion for me.
Mm-hmm.
And said, we can book you. Don't worry about it. You need to be on your own. And I took that leap.
Yeah.
And I started working on the book in earnest. And it took another 4 years.
Wow.
Because I left in 2000, and it wasn't until 2004 that leap first hit the bookstores. Remember those?
Wow. Yeah. Yep. I do. Okay. So when you're at this 20-year anniversary point, and you're saying, here it is, like, take it. What's your greatest hope in sharing this out with people? Like, what do you, like, one, you're giving away for free. So that's super awesome and generous. Well, it's 20 years in the making, not in the making, but in the living. So what's your greatest hope?
So interesting, because it is kind of 20 years in the making, because what I'm learning is that people that I've, as I said at the outset of the show, I'm still meeting people that have just read the book.
Right.
And so it's a story in the making, because they're applying it in their unique ways
Yep.
in this modern era to
Yep.
their companies. So
Yep.
I'm constantly learning about how to apply
Yep.
love, energy, audacity, and proof through the people that are applying them in their businesses every day.
Mm.
So my hope is, here. This is my grand design in this whole thing. Here's what I figure. Out of the couple 100,000 or so people that have bought this book over the years, a certain percentage of those people have actually read it. There's going to be a certain percentage of those people that don't get beyond reading the front and back cover, right? But a certain percentage of those people have actually read the book. And a certain percentage of the people who have actually read the book connect with it in the ways that you and my future guests on this show have connected with it.
Yep.
So my thinking is, well, what that means is I've just got to get this into the hands of more people.
Yep.
So there's a couple ways I could do that. I could just pile a bunch of money into marketing and PR people and try to sell this book to as many people as I possibly can.
Yep.
Or I could just give it away. And there's a certain element of that frankly is just a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
And also, the audio book, I read it. So for people who are unfamiliar with the book, it's written as a novel. It's written as a story, and I wrote it in first person. So I'm the narrator of the story. So a lot of times when people read this book, they feel like they know me because they've read my voice. It really is my voice, even though the story is mostly fictional. So in the audiobook, it's actually my voice. I'm reading the story, and I've gotten great feedback on it. I think it turned out really great. So I'm just hopeful that a lot of people will download it and listen to it, and a certain percentage of those people are going to connect with it, and I'm going to make a bunch of new friends, and then we're gonna see more and more case studies of people applying it to great effect in their lives in general and their businesses in particular, and that's my motive. I mean, honestly, that's where my business comes from. So the consulting work that I do and the speaking work that I do, where my actual revenue comes from people like that. So why not? It's and it's just such a great pleasure and joy to share this work with more people in the hopes that it's going to make a difference for them.
Yeah. Well, I for one am grateful for it. When I came into your body of work, it was at a transitional time in my leadership story that when we flip the story, flip the script, you'll get to hear more about. But for today, I just want to say I'm really so grateful. I literally can say I don't know where my life would be. It would be very different if I hadn't have met. I don't want to give you all the credit because actually it's actually you started the seed, but it was your community, right? Like it was Jason invited me there, and so I really understand when you talk about the ripple effect. It's like it it starts with a seed in this book, and then you created this community that understood these values, and it was these values I needed to be around at that time in my life. I got to meet you later, but it's like your seed really created meaning in my life, so I get it.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I would never want to take full credit for any of that, because what has happened, and again, this is the premise behind this series that we're all going to experience together.
Yeah.
Is there's a certain kind of value set that people who are attracted to this work share with each other.
Yep.
So, I've had the opportunity to do several events over the years, bringing people together, live events,
Yep.
the Extreme Leadership Experience, our certification programs, and every time there are new relationships that get formed that I really had nothing to do with other than creating the bucket, the context in which people had the opportunity to meet each other.
Yep.
And that has been the greatest and most unexpected gift to me in this whole process. So thank you for persisting in your pursuit of being a really important part of this community, Maurice. It's
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful for you, and there's a lot, man. There's just a lot more of that to come as a
Mhm.
result of the show and other things that we're working on.
One of the things I want to give some airtime to, and then we're gonna move to a rapid close to stay on hour, is I want to give a little airtime to this thing called a framework. One of the things that I love the way you describe it is like you're you 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 created this framework. It was strong enough for you to say, hey, this might be even better, a point of view that you believed in enough to put out there in the world. And still at this stage in your career, you're saying, I'm still learning how to apply love, energy, audacity, and proof in my life through the
Yeah.
people that are doing it and through your own life experiences.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't know if there's a comparison between like, there's something about this idea, and particularly with this framework, that it will never be done. It feels like it will never be done. Versus here's a hard and fast principle that just do this and everything will be fine. It's like there's like a really expansion point when I hear you describe it. So it's not really a question, but I just want to maybe it's an invitation to give that some airtime. Of like,
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, it is an ongoing process. There's no end to this, and that's true for the leadership journey in general.
yeah,
It's true for our human journey. There's never a place where okay, got it all figured out. Sometimes we delude ourselves into thinking we've arrived at that place,
yeah,
and that's where death begins. That's where stagnation begins. And we all have an expiration date, certainly. So that doesn't mean that our ideas need to. And we so this framework has that kind of flexibility inherent in it. Here's the way I like to think about it. No matter what it is that you're working on, no matter what it is that you're trying to accomplish, if you can cultivate love for that thing, if you can generate energy around it, if you can inspire yourself and others to be audacious in the pursuit of achieving that thing, and if you could prove that you're making progress along the way, whatever it is that you're trying to do, you have a better chance of getting it done. And there are probably thousands of ways to apply all of these things, and I can't even begin to claim that I know what they all are. I've got a
Yep.
pretty good idea of where to start.
Yep.
I'm pretty good at helping people to get there.
Mhm.
But it's ultimately it's our own thing to discover.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. One question and then rapid close. Of all four of these letters, in your own life experience, what have you had the highest personal challenge with and around?
Love, energy, audacity, and proof. What's been my highest personal challenge? I'm going to say it's energy.
Hmm.
Because oftentimes, in my creative projects and my work projects, maybe it's because I'm comparing it to an ideal. But for me, even when I'm really excited about something, like I'll be specific, writing a new book, for
Mhm.
example, I've written 5 books now. So The Radical Leap, The Radical Edge, Greater Than Yourself, Love is Just Damn Good Business, and I co-authored Twisted Business with my friend JJ French about his experience at Twisted Sister. little bit of a little bit of a departure from the
Yeah.
others, but in every single one of those, without exception, the biggest challenge has been generating the energy that I need to sit down and write the damn thing.
Mm.
Right? I'm working on a new book right now. Same challenge.
Mm.
Even with music, same kind of challenge. When it comes to writing, writing new songs and challenging myself to do it. So I'd say that is probably my biggest personal challenge, which is surprising to people because people see me as being a very energetic person, which I am
Yeah.
in certain contexts. I will contrast that though with the population at large, because I did a survey on this a number of years ago to my email list. I said, love, energy, audacity, and proof. Which of these things do you find you have the greatest challenge with?
Yep.
And by a factor of 3 to 1, it was audacity. That's what most people have the challenge with, taking those kind of risks and pursuing that that fear every day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's surprising to me too. I would have guessed proof. Actually, I thought you were gonna go on proof. Which good. Okay. Rapid close. Are you ready?
I am, but first, proof is a very close second. Because proof in a lot of ways is about proving that you mean what you say through the congruence between your words and your actions.
Yeah.
It's about doing what you say you will do. So this phrase DWISYWD, DWISYWD, do what you say you will do, is a phrase coined by the aforementioned Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. And it is a very simple behavioral description of credibility, personal credibility.
Yeah.
And that is it's an ongoing challenge to hold myself accountable to my own words.
Yeah.
So that's a close second.
And I'm glad you gave that words, because I just kind of left it there. And the reason, because we've been in the trenches together, and your value for creativity and freedom, and your heart to serve and to say yes, are in somewhat incongruent with the commitments you want to make and the commitments that you actually in your heart have time for. So
Yeah,
I feel better that I just didn't leave that. Oh, I thought you were going to be proof.
Yeah.
So thank you. Okay, rapid close. So rapid close, Mr. Farber. So this isn't
rapid.
This isn't a 5-minute.
No long answers here. Short
answer on each
got
thing.
it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, wait, hold on. Let me write that down.
Okay. You ready? Come on. Ready.
Oh,
Here we go. Ready. In your life right now, tell us something that you are absolutely loving. Love.
Playing music out and about Kansas City area, and
Good.
recording a new album.
Awesome. In your life right now, if there was an area in your life that you wish you had more energy for, what would it be?
We just talked about it.
Yeah.
This new book that I'm writing.
Okay, awesome.
Which, by the way, I'll give you a teaser. I'm writing it with a couple of my mentors. Pressure's on.
There you go. Okay, 3. Audacity. In your life right now, what scares the I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this thing. What scares the shit out of you?
So you just answered your question. Yes, you are, of course, allowed to swear on this thing. What scares the shit out of me is is that book. That book, because I'm writing it with my mentors, and I don't want to let them down.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And finally, proof. This is the very first session. All the listeners out there, if there is one thing, one commitment that you are willing to give 100% commitment to yourself and all the people hearing this, that you're willing to make, leaving this podcast, what is that commitment?
Well, Maurice, thank you for joining us on our first show. You've done an excellent job as an interviewer.
Back to the question.
Shit.
One commitment. It's got to be related to Leap. It's something that's going to be a commitment towards living Leap in your life.
Well, I can make this commitment with 100% confidence. It's just may not be as specific as you like. I make a commitment to being the walking, talking, living, breathing embodiment of cultivating love in business, in everything that I do and all the people that I meet.
That feels specific enough. I love the question. If you're ever wondering what to do next, ask what would love do. and to your commitment. And I think of as a business partner and a friend, to me, that's really, really clear. If I ever feel unloved or you're doing something that wouldn't answer the question, what would love do? You're giving me 100% permission to hold you accountable to that.
Absolutely.
So that's super
Just
clear.
not right. Just not right now.
Come on. That doesn't sound 100%.
Just kidding.
I know you are. But other people might not know you are. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. I do have a bit of a wry sense of humor. What you could say. Anyway.
Well, thank you for giving me the honor to put you in the hot seat. I will absolutely do the same for you. You can ask me anything on a future episode. If you liked this, then please show up for the Leap Hour. You're going to hear tremendous stories about leaders, real world leaders that are part of the percentages of the people that have connected with the principles in Steve's book, in Steve's principles, that have taken this and applied it in their lives, in their business, in their families, in their communities. And I've met many of them, and those stories are inspirational. You're going to learn some stuff, probably have some laughs, definitely get to know Steve a little bit more. So thanks for showing up for the first live Leap Hour.
And thank you, Maurice, for reversing roles with me here today. You did a great job. I'm honored to know you, honored to call you my friend. And folks, thanks for tuning in. Thank you for being, for some of you, my new friends, and for others, for my old friends that have tuned in. It's great to have you here supporting this effort. And stay tuned for our first time where I will be doing the interviews with an extreme leader out and about. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll see you soon.
See you later.
Welcome to the Leap Hour, where inspiring leadership meets real-world impact. Hosted by Steve Farber, acclaimed author of The Radical Leap, this show brings you face-to-face with visionary leaders who embody the art of leading with love, energy, audacity, and proof. In each episode, Steve dives deep into the journeys of remarkable individuals who've embraced extreme leadership to ignite change, spark innovation, and inspire others to greatness. These are the game changers, the risk takers, and the leaders who prove that heart and courage can change the world. This is the Leap Hour, and the conversation starts now.